Introduction to Karmic Obstacles in Buddhism. When it comes to karma, people often think that the Buddha was simply reiterating an idea that had long existed in Indian culture, something everyone already believed. But this is not the case. The Buddha used the term karma, a familiar term in their language, but he gave it a very special meaning. He explained that karma is our intention, and it is this intention that shapes our lives. He went on to say that our intentions are the primary factor shaping not only our present life but also our future life. These intentions have been shaping our lives all along, and they shape the lives of all beings. When people came to hear the Buddha teach, he often had to repeatedly explain this particular aspect of karma. He received many questions about karma, indicating that these questions deserved a thorough answer. The fact that he had to rephrase them showed that people did not yet understand karma correctly, at least not in a way that could help them end their suffering. So what is the useful way to look at karma? First, he asked us to look at our own lives from the perspective of karma. What we are experiencing now is a combination of the potentials from past intentions and our present intentions. This principle applies to everyone, everywhere. When we hear about karma, we often think about past karma, not just from this life but also from previous lives, and it seems like something far away. But actually, we are creating karma all the time. Every time there is an intention in the mind, that is karma. Even sitting here with your eyes closed, you are creating karma, mental karma. So make it good. Mental karma is your attitude towards something, and it shapes everything you do. You need to practice to ensure that no matter the situation, you are bringing something good to it. That is your contribution to the circumstances within you and to others. Chapter 1. Dependent Origination and Karma, Karma in the Present. In the teachings on dependent co-arising, the Buddha talks about how intention, which is karma, is shaped by the process of fabrication. You put things together, sometimes on a subconscious level, often on a subconscious level, and there are many layers on intentions going on in the mind that you're hardly aware of. When we meditate, we try to get quiet so that we can see these intentions and bring more knowledge to them, because if you fabricate these things out of ignorance, you're going to suffer. If you bring skill and awareness to the process of fabricating these things, that turns them into a path, the path to the end of suffering. So fabrication. What is it? You've got the breath coming in and out. That's bodily fabrication. There's an intentional element in how you breathe, so try to breathe in a way that creates a sense of well-being right now. Then there's verbal fabrication. Directed thought and evaluation. Direct your thoughts to the breath. Evaluate the breath. Do you like this breath? If you don't, you can try another one. It's like trying on a different set of clothes. You don't like this set of clothes, you change them for another one. You find something you like, then you wear it. If, after a while, you decide that you don't like it anymore, you can change. There's a wide range of possibilities in how you can evaluate the breath and make it comfortable, and then take the sense of ease that comes with the breath and think of it spreading around the body to get the most use out of it. Now, to do this requires perceptions, which is one type of mental fabrication. The other is feeling. You're creating feelings of ease with the breath. And it's all done by holding in mind a perception of the breath, preferably the breath, as a full-body process. The whole nervous system is involved. In this way, there's a greater sense of ease that courses through the body as you breathe in, breathe out. Everything feels opened up. Everything feels connected. This is all karma, good karma, because you're bringing the right attitude to the present moment, realizing that you have some power to shape things in a good direction. You want to give the mind a good place to stay, so that it has the strength to do what it knows is right. Another way of bringing good karma to the present moment, a good attitude to the present moment, is developing thoughts of goodwill. This works in several directions. First, it creates a basis for skillful ideas in your mind so that when you're dealing with someone who's difficult, you're much more likely to think of something that's good for them, and for yourself. Goodwill also has an impact on what's coming in from the past. As the Buddha said, it's not the case that we have to suffer, tit for tat, everything we've done in the past. There are certain potentials coming into the present moment, and what you choose to water is going to determine what you experience. The image is of a field full of seeds. Some of the seeds are ready to sprout, some of them are not yet ready to sprout. You try to find the good ones that are ready to sprout and you water them. You may not know which ones are ready to sprout, but if you recognize something good coming up in the mind, encourage that. Goodwill is one of those things, because when bad seeds come up regardless of what you're doing right now, and some of them will, if you have a broader state of mind, they won't have that huge an impact. As the Buddha said, it's like someone who's very wealthy who's fined for a crime. If you've got a lot of wealth, the fine doesn't really matter. It's like those banks that make billions and billions. If you fine them $1 billion or so, it doesn't really have any impact on them. But if you take an ordinary person who doesn't have that kind of money and fine that person $1 billion, the person will be ruined. So you're making yourself wealthy here with thoughts of goodwill. In fact, as the Buddha said, this is a monk's wealth. As monks, we don't have much material wealth, but we do have the wealth of goodwill. So whatever negative things come up from the past, the state of the mind is big enough to encompass them and not be knocked over by them, to the point where there's a lot of the stuff you hardly notice. So always remember that you're not just sitting here on the receiving end of the world. You're actually generating your experience. You're taking in potentials that come from the past and you're creating your experience of the world. Every time you look, every time you listen, every time you deal with the senses in any way, every time you move the body, every time you speak, with every thought, you're a producer, you're a creator, you're a put-together heir. In this way, you shape your life. This is one of the reasons why when the Buddha talks about harming yourself, it's not hitting yourself or killing yourself or anything like that. It's actually killing other people, stealing from other people, lying to them, having illicit sex with them, taking intoxicants. You harm yourself in these ways because the part of you that's the karma creator creating lots of bad stuff is going to have an impact on your experience now and on into the future. In the same way, he said, when you harm other people, it's not that you go hit them or anything. You harm them by getting them to create bad karma. The worst thing you can do to somebody is to persuade them to do something really unskillful, because that karma then becomes theirs. If you hit them, it may be something in their past karma, but now it's gone. It's been paid off. It's now your karma. But if you get them to do something unskillful, the impact of that on their experience is going to last for a long time. So remember, you're a karma producer. Other people are karma producers. Start some good productions by training your mind. Learn how to produce good karma. Learn how to do it well, because that's your only true possession. Chapter 2. What is Karma? Excerpt from the book Noble Strategy by Jeffrey DeGraff. Karma is one of those words we don't translate. Its basic meaning is simple enough, action. But because of the weight the Buddha's teachings give to the role of action, the Sanskrit word karma packs in so many implications that the English word action can't carry all its luggage. This is why we've simply airlifted the original word into our vocabulary. But when we try unpacking the connotations the word carries now that it has arrived in everyday usage, we find that most of its luggage has gotten mixed up in transit. For most people, karma functions like fate, and bad fate at that, an inexplicable, unchangeable force coming out of our past, for which we are somehow vaguely responsible and powerless to fight. I guess it's just my karma. I've heard people sigh when bad fortune strikes with such force that they see no alternative to resigned acceptance. The fatalism implicit in this statement is one reason why so many of us feel repelled by the concept of karma, for it sounds like the kind of callous myth-making that can justify almost any kind of suffering or injustice in the status quo. If he's poor, it's because of his karma. If she's been raped, it's because of her karma. From this, it seems a short step to saying that he or she deserves to suffer, and so doesn't deserve our help. This misperception comes from the fact that the Buddhist concept of karma came to the West at the same time as non-Buddhist concepts, and so ended up with some of their luggage. Although many ancient concepts of karma are fatalistic, the early Buddhist concept was not fatalistic at all. In fact, if we look closely at early Buddhist ideas of karma, we'll find that they give even less importance to myths about the past than most modern people do. For the early Buddhists, karma was nonlinear. Other Indian schools believed that karma operated in a straight line, with actions from the past influencing the present and present actions influencing the future. As a result, they saw little room for free will. Buddhists, however, saw that karma acts in feedback loops, with the present moment being shaped both by past and by present actions. Present actions shape not only the future, but also the present. This constant opening for present input into the causal process makes free will possible. This freedom is symbolized in the imagery the Buddhists use to explain the process flowing water. Sometimes the flow from the past is so strong that little can be done except to stand fast. But there are also times when the flow is gentle enough to be diverted in almost any direction. So, instead of promoting resigned powerlessness, the early Buddhist notion of karma focused on the liberating potential of what the mind is doing at every moment. Who you are, what you come from, is not anywhere near as important as the mind's motives for what it's doing right now. Even though the past may account for many of the inequalities we see in life, our measure as human beings is not the hand we've been dealt, for that hand can change at any moment. We take our own measure by how well we play the hand we've got. If you're suffering, you try not to continue the unskillful mental habits that would keep that particular karmic feedback going. If you see that other people are suffering, and you're in a position to help, you focus not on their karmic past, but your karmic opportunity in the present. Someday you may find yourself in the same predicament they're in now, so here's your opportunity to act in the way you'd like them to act toward you when that day comes. Karma and dignity. This belief that one's dignity is measured, not by one's past, but by one's present actions, flew right in the face of the Indian traditions of caste-based hierarchies, and explains why early Buddhists had such a field day poking fun at the pretensions and mythology of the Brahmins. As the Buddha pointed out, a Brahmin could be a superior person not because he came out of a Brahmin womb, but only if he acted with truly skillful intentions. We read the early Buddhist attacks on the caste system, and aside from their anti-racist implications, they often strike us as quaint. What we fail to realize is that they strike right at the heart of our myths about our own past. Our obsession with defining who we are in terms of where we come from, our race, ethnic heritage, gender, socioeconomic background, sexual preference, our modern tribes. We put inordinate amounts of energy into creating and maintaining the mythology of our tribe so that we can take vicarious pride in our tribe's good name. Even when we become Buddhists, the tribe comes first. We demand a Buddhism that honors our myths. From the standpoint of karma, though, where we come from is old karma, over which we have no control. What we are is a nebulous concept at best, and pernicious at worst, when we use it to find excuses for acting on unskillful motives. The worth of a tribe lies only in the skillful actions of its individual members. Even when those good people belong to our tribe, their good karma is theirs, not ours. And of course, every tribe has its bad members, which means that the mythology of the tribe is a fragile thing. To hang on to anything fragile requires a large investment of passion, aversion, and delusion, leading inevitably to more unskillful actions on into the future. So the Buddhist teachings on karma, far from being a quaint relic from the past, are a direct challenge to a basic thrust and basic flaw in modern culture. Only when we abandon our obsession with finding vicarious pride in our tribal past and can take actual pride in the motives that underlie our present actions can we say that the word karma, in its Buddhist sense, has recovered its luggage. And when we open the luggage, we'll find that it's brought us a gift. The gift we give ourselves and one another when we drop our myths about who we are, and can instead be honest about what we're doing with each moment, at the same time making the effort to do it right. Chapter 3. Under the Light of Karmic Retribution by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. People tend to assume that when the Buddha was talking about karma, he was just repeating a general idea in Indian culture, something that everybody already believed. He didn't have to explain much. That's actually not the case. He used the word karma, which was part of their language, but he meant it in a very special sense. As he said, it's your intentions. He went on to say that your intentions are what shape your life and your lives. These things have been shaping your lives all along, and they shape the lives of all beings. When the people came to listen to the Buddha teach, he often found that he had to explain this particular aspect of karma again and again. He got a lot of questions about karma that he had to rephrase, which meant that they were questions that deserved an analytical answer. The fact that he had to rephrase them meant that people didn't even know how to ask questions about karma in the right way, at least in the way that was going to be useful for putting an end to suffering. And what is the useful way to look at karma? First, he has you look at your own life in terms of karma. The things you're experiencing now are a combination of potentials coming from past intentions and of your own present intentions. This same principle applies to everybody, everywhere. There's a very common reflection the Buddha has you do, which is to think about where you're looking for happiness in terms of karma. Those 5 reflections that we often chant start with the fact that you're subject to aging, illness, and death, from separation from all that you love. Pretty grim, but it's not meant to be depressing, it's more meant to be sobering. Then there's the reflection on karma. That's really all you've got. Ajahn Suwat liked to make the point that there's so much the Buddha says is not self, not self, not self. But then when you get to karma, I'm the owner of my actions. Okay, that's something that's yours. Your intentions are things over which you have power. That's quite a statement right there. Your intentions shape your life, and you have power over your intentions. Therefore, you can have the power to shape your life. But all too often we abdicate that power to somebody else, to greed, aversion, delusion, the voices in the mind that want to just go over old stories. This person did this to me. That person did this to me. That wasn't right. That wasn't right. We can carry these things for years. Sometimes we're not even conscious that we're carrying them around. The mind gets still for a while, you have a chance to come out here and they come up. Karmic retribution, overcoming the past to find peace. I remember my first year back in Thailand. All of a sudden issues from grade school, high school, college, family issues, all kinds of things started coming up. Things I'd forgotten for years. But when the mind is still, they can come bubbling up again. When you find yourself hounded by these things, remember the Buddha's reflection. Think of it in terms of karma. On the one hand, you wouldn't have experienced these things without some karma of your own. And secondly, other people are creating their karma and usually doing it out of ignorance. When you think about this, after a while you get a sense of dispassion for the whole process. You can change the narrative so that instead of being hounded by these things, the narrative is that you're able to reflect on them in line with the principle of karma, and you found that you can go beyond them. Then the Buddha has you reflect on all beings everywhere. This takes a lot of the sting out of your own personal sufferings. Everybody going through life is suffering. They've got aging, illness, death, separation, and they've got their karma too. You can think about divas having a good time up there in heaven. Well, they're like trust fund kids. As long as the stock market's doing well, the trust fund is fine. Okay, they're fine. But when everything collapses, in other words, when their good karma runs out, who knows where they're going to fall? So even on the planes of the universe where things are pretty comfortable, there's nothing really solid. And as I said, when you think about your narratives in the context of all the narratives of all the beings in the universe, all the people who've been wronged, all the people who've done good things and still suffered because they had some past karma that hadn't quite worked itself out yet, it gives a sobering sense of dismay. But it also takes a lot of the burden off of your own sufferings. The Buddha recommends that when you're suffering grief over the loss of a loved one, reflect on the fact that this happens to everybody. You would think that reflecting on all the griefs of all these millions and millions of beings would be heavier, but actually it's not. It's lighter. You realize this is just the way things are. The universe isn't conspiring against you. This is just the way things happen. This is the way karma acts. This is how karma works itself out, based on your intentions. The purpose of all this is to get you to focus in on your intentions right now. What is the quality of your intention right now? You can't do anything about your past intentions, but you can change your present intentions. Part of that involves learning how to retell the stories from the past. So instead of being a victim and staying there, you were a victim, but now you've risen above that. You can look at things from a lot broader sense of what's going on here in the life of living beings and decide that you're not going to let yourself be victimized again. In particular, you're not going to keep victimizing yourself with the stories of the past. When you have that attitude then, as you focus on the breath, you focus on the breath with a light mind. with a sense of having come to a place that does offer safety. Concentration may be something fabricated, but it takes you to a good place. You can start engaging in your verbal fabrications, all the thoughts and conversations of the mind in a skillful way. Bring them to a focal point right here with the breath. Learn how to figure out what's going on here in the body, what positive things you can do with this energy you've got here, so that there's a sense of health and wholeness in the body, a sense of balance, well-being. This isn't the ultimate safe place, but it's the road to the ultimate safe place, and it's a good place to be walking. Think of all the other places you could be wandering right now, physically, mentally, and it feels really good to be right here, working on the factor of the mind that shapes everything and putting that in good shape. Once that's in good shape, in other words, when your intentions are in good shape, then, over time, everything else will fall in line.